So this video is about how to make this wooden flag project. It's just from scraps, very simple. So some things you're going to need is a circular saw, pencil, tape measure, square, torch, paint or stain, and then some sort of adhesive. This is all scraps that I had left over that you can find, and if you can't find it, it's relatively cheap. So what I'm doing here is just sighting the boards. So I'm finding the crown and getting them all lined up in the same direction. And here I'm cutting 13 pieces of 1x2 to 18 inches. I had some scraps that were, I want to say around 24 inches, so that you see me cutting a bunch of them down to 18. So here I'm just lightly and quickly sanding the edges of each board. Doesn't take very long, and it makes a difference of how the finish will come out. So here I'm just picking out what side of the board will look the nicest and getting that in the direction that I chose. And here I'm going to use a torch. Obviously be careful with a torch if you haven't used it before. And this was my first time burning the wood like this. So it did take some getting used to, and some advice that I would give would be take your time and go in consistent pattern. Sometimes the wood will not burn, so then you want to go over it, and then in a matter of seconds it'll turn too dark. So just take your time, constant speed, and I would say to not get too close, or find that sweet spot. So we're going to just speed it up here in a few seconds, and you guys can just watch. I believe my phone cut out after a couple boards. So here's a couple boards getting done. All right, so here, after all the boards are done, I measure 7 inches over and 7 inches down. That'll get you your union space, and I tape it off. And then once again, my phone cut out while I was painting the red, and I used a spray paint. You can use stain or whatever type of paint you have. This is leftover stuff that's left over. In total, this project probably cost $10. Probably not even that. All right, so here after all the red is painted, I switched where the tape was at so I could paint the blue. And here's the blue all done. You're gonna go down 7 boards. And make sure you get all the edges. This will, because these type of boards are not square, the edges are rounded, so you can't see down. You can see down between them just a little bit. All right, so again, here, this video is about doing this for as cheap as possible with stuff that's left over. And this is adhesive. This is construction adhesive. This will work just fine for this project. But if you have wood glue, that would probably work even better. But again, this is just stuff that's left over, and this will work just fine. Any sort of adhesive will work. And something that I learned would be, like I was talking about, the edges not being square. They're a little rounded, so you have less surface area to put the adhesive. You just have to be careful about squeeze out, especially with this construction adhesive, because unlike wood glue, you're gonna have a very hard time cleaning it up while it's wet or while it's dry. So then I squared it off. I got one side square because if need be, you can always square the other side with the saw. But I kind of liked how it looked, you know, rough. Boards weren't completely exact, you know, within an 1/8 inch, maybe 1/16 of an inch. Then you clamp them down, leave it sit for the night. And here I got the union. I printed it off the internet and then cut it out. It's 7 inches by 5 inches. And in this next clip, I'm going to be cutting each star out. Yes, by hand. You can always buy. I've seen videos where the people have bought the unions online, and I'm not sure the cost. And I'm sure they're not very expensive, but again, this is to do it as cheaply as possible. And this actually worked better than I thought. So here I'm going to take, it took me about an hour to do this whole thing. Again, just take your time. I took a very sharp utility knife and cut each star out. It took me about an hour. But you can always use the stencil again if you're planning on doing more of these. So make sure you hang on to it. All right, so here I'm gonna line up the stencil now fully cut out. And I'm just gonna take some painter's tape and carefully press it onto the wood. Make sure it is pressed on there very good so that the paint does not seep through on any sort of edges that you don't want it to. And I kind of took 3 strips, as you can see, just to get a wide border, just to make sure of any overspray. It was spray paint, so I wasn't sure about the overspray, but it didn't actually have that much overspray. All right, so I used a metallic or silver spray paint here, and again, just what I've learned, this was my first time doing it, but just take your time. And honestly, if you miss a couple spots and the blue bleeds through, it makes it look more rustic, in my opinion. And with spray paint, it was dry within half an hour. This stencil, you spend an hour cutting it out. So here's the final product. Again, like I said, it's all scraps left over, spray paints left over, and construction adhesive that I had laying around. Total cost would have probably been around $8 to $10. And yes, there's obviously probably things that we could have done better in this. But in total, it probably took me 3 hours in total over the course of 2 days. So I do have other videos of DIY sort of projects, coaster video, if you guys just want to check that out.